TSX lost 45 points yesterday. The Dow dropped 72 and the Nasdaq slipped 5. The Canadian dollar has dropped a third of a cent to 99.16 cents US. Gold is down nearly $6 to $1,147.30 an ounce. And crude oil is up 36 cents to $85.52 a barrel. Well, after a lockout since last summer, U.S. Steel has resumed contract talks with the union at its plant in Nanticoke. 800 workers were laid off last March because of the economy. Then in August, 200 more were locked out when their contracts expired. Since then, workers have been picketing and rallying in front of the gates. The federal government is suing U.S. Steel, saying it broke production and employment promises that were made when it bought Stelco in 2007. A mega airline merger could be in the works south of the border. U.S. Airways is in talks to merge with the parent of United Airlines in a move that could create the U.S.'s second largest carrier. The negotiations mark the latest efforts to consolidate the struggling airline industry there. Both companies have been pretty vocal in calling for greater consolidation within the airline industry to help prop up falling revenues. Here in Ontario, we're going to soon start paying less for prescriptions after the province announced it's going to scrap an allowance that pharmacists receive on generic drugs. Right now, professional allowances are paid by generic drug companies to pharmacy owners for stocking their drugs, and that leads to an increased cost to us. While pharmacists say those funds help deliver services, the province says there are abuses in the system. Last year, generic drug manufacturers paid $750 million to pharmacy owners. Pharmacists say the changes will probably mean that they'll have to cut back their hours, lay off staff, maybe even close some stores. Well, for spring allergies, the first thing that comes to mind is some flowers and trees. Let's check in now with Bob Cowan.
Yeah, we're hooking up with Randy Gunning from Dell Pharmacy because it is that time of year. Trees and bees and all kinds of allergies, but actually we're zeroing in on bee stings because of course they can be quite severe and we're dealing with anaphylactic shock in extreme cases. There's many options here, EpiPens being one of them when we talk about prescription medication.
When it comes to anaphylactic reactions, EpiPen is the gold standard, and many people should have them on hand if they know that they have an anaphylactic reaction to bee stings, peanuts, whatever.
Now, what are the caveats here in terms of, like, you don't use an EpiPen every time you get a bee sting, though. You have to be careful in terms of when it should be used?
If you've been diagnosed with having an anaphylactic reaction to a bee sting, then every time you get one, you should use it, and after you use it, you should get medical attention, even if your symptoms resolve after using the EpiPen. It's very important because you can have a retrograde reaction up to 2 hours afterwards that will need medical attention as well.
Okay. Someone in that situation, they don't have an EpiPen. What are other options?
First of all, you would probably have to use one of the classic antihistamines. For children, something like Benadryl. Okay. For adults, the Benadryl also comes in generic, as well as capsules to be used. But the gold standard is definitely using the EpiPen.
Yeah. Are there any what not to do? Are there any warnings that you should deliver?
What not to do is ignore the reaction. You never ignore a reaction when you're having any kind of anaphylactic reaction, which would include difficulty with breathing, swelling of the lips and the face. That kind of thing would indicate that.
Okay, so that's the extreme cases, but in terms of the garden variety...
Garden variety seasonal allergies are starting out there, even though today it probably doesn't look like today we would be having allergies, but tree pollen's out there, grass pollen's out there, and for that, people can use the classic remedies. We have the classic antihistamines, which can cause a bit of sedation. Some of the newer ones, which are non-sedating, come in also, as I said earlier, children's varieties as well. There are eye drops that you can use. There's a whole wide variety of things that are out there that are used, and you should actually speak to your pharmacist to make that selection. This is only a very small amount.
Yeah, and another consideration is the drowsy and non-drowsy.
Yes, a lot of the classic antihistamines may cause some drowsiness. They may be better at treating more severe reactions. They do not last as long as the newer non-sedating ones, which can be once or twice a day, and can be more helpful for people because they don't cause sedation.
Right. Your pharmacist knows all at Dell Pharmacy. Thanks, Randy Gunning, with the health news we can use. All right, we got some traffic news you need to know because we're dealing with this issue on the Queen Street Hill this morning. Leslie's all over that in your weather.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Well, we'll check on